What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are here with DC K.O. When we are back with Knightfight. Knightfight, of course, being the story where Batman, during the DC K.O. tournament event, tried to cheat. Batman tried to teleport out when he died, and the Heart of Apocalypse transported him to a whole new place, which is basically his own living nightmare, except this is the worst of Batman's nightmares. So, here's a crazy thing about this. At the end of the last story that we did, Batman was confronted by Jason Todd, and Batman had always kind of figured out. The first issue he figured it out, the second issue he figured it out, and in this issue he starts to figure it out that all of this is just an illusion by the Heart of Apocalypse. None of it's real. And so at the end of the last issue, Jason Todd kept trying to convince Batman that he was actually Clayface, that he was somehow insane and he had essentially destroyed Gotham, so on and so forth. And so Batman just kind of says, okay, if the Heart wants me to believe it, then I will believe it. And so that's why this opens up and he says, the Heart of Apocalypse has created twisted alternate futures for me where I must fight my former Robins to the death. Literally, he's supposed to kill them all. Then he says, but I'm done playing its game. And so that's when he goes to attack Jason Todd, knocks Jason off the building, which as sure as the sun would rise, Jason Todd would hit the ground and die. Batman catches him. But because he does it as Two-Face, he starts to almost kind of corrupt the program, right? To break the process. Because when that happens, Jason Todd's response, you saved me, right? You really think that you are Batman. And he just says, you did something that I could not do, Jason. Right? As much as I consider myself a loner, that was always a lie. I am never really alone. I had you and your brothers and your sisters. I surrounded myself with people constantly. I'm sorry that you had to do this. And that's where Jason lashes out. Now, here's the funny thing about this. On the surface, you normally get these kind of instances where Batman kind of comes to these realizations, right? Depending on the story. I always thought I was alone, but now I'm not, and it turns out that I've got friends and family. What makes this so cool is this focuses on the idea that it's Batman's head. It's what he truly feels in his heart and in his mind, as opposed to just something he's saying within the moment. It's not to say that he ever lied in the past, but it is a cool concept here, right? The heart knows this is what Batman truly is, and Batman knows that as well. And so that's why Jason Todd fires back and says, do not pretend that you are him. And Bruce says, you do not have to believe me that I'm Basil or Bruce, but I'm staying here with you. It does not matter what this world is. I refuse to leave you here by yourself. Let's figure out how to get us both out of this world together. And that's when Jason just kind of looks at him and asks, together, and then the whole thing starts going sideways. The Heart of Apocalypse manifests and it just says, you cheated, right? It says, you do not make the rules, Batman. I make the rules. And that's what Bruce says, I am done with your game, Heart. I am not doing what you want anymore. I refuse to fight my children. And that's where the Heart gets dangerous, because in that moment, it just says, oh, really? Right? How about I reveal what's been going on in the tournament since your elimination? Witness the fate of all of your allies. They are losing and they need you. But not only that, Joker is winning. Before, I was merely punishing you for attempting to cheat, but you will not stop breaking my rules. So I will make a deal, Batman, a new offer. If you beat my challenge, I will return you to the tournament. And Batman just asks, why should I trust you? And the Heart says, you can't. But from here on out, the challenges will be much more difficult. I will test you in ways that are not physical. I will test your mind and I will test your heart. And so at that point, you jump to Batman when he's in the middle of a room, right? And he says, I have brought you all here today because I have uncovered the killer. The police suspect Mrs. White because of her father's true identity. And then he spins around and he's like, it was actually Colonel Mustard in the library with the candlestick. That's not true at all. That's not what he says. Instead, Mrs. White says, I never should have lied, right? I was just so ashamed. And Batman says, and most of you suspect Mr. Green because of his efforts to conceal his many other crimes. And of course, Mr. Green just says, alleged crimes, sir, right? It's an instance of Clue. And this is where Batman just says, but only an amateur detective would believe such things. Now I know exactly who killed Dalton Glory, and they are, in fact, in this room. Soon, I will tell you their motive and means. They thought they were clever, but, and then a person just pops up out of nowhere and just yells to shut up and just says, you're always too smart for your own good, Batman. Says it'll be the death of you someday, but for now, the blood will be on your hands. And in turn, Batman, of course, sends out like a technological bat to attack this guy, which is kind of dope, right? He just says, it's been some time since I needed to resort to fisticuffs, which I think is amazing to hear Batman say that. And of course, Batman is thanked for his efforts, right? I knew it was him, like he's so brave, you really are the world's greatest detective, yada, yada, yada. And so he's told, congratulations, Batman, another crime solved. Gotham is safe because of you. Not a single open or cold case left in our fair city once again. And he just says, all except for one. And the question's asked, right, what's he talking about? And he says, there is one case that I have never solved. And so at that point, you jump back to the Batcave, right? And you get this kind of statement going back and forth. Hey, Tim, Cass and I caught Owlman in Corto Maltese. I love that you were able to do it without my help, Stephanie. So this is not Bruce Wayne. This is Tim Drake, right? This is cool. Because in response to that, Stephanie says, how is it that we solved the case before you, but you still sound smug? And so when Tim Drake responds, he says the biggest reason for that is because I was on Teen Titans, and Teen Titans was dope. But then he just kind of laughs, right? And that's where Stephanie says, hop in the Batplane and meet us up here to celebrate. And Tim just says, I can't. And that's where Stephanie says, Tim, come on, don't be like Bruce. Live a little, come and hang out, maybe call Bernard. And that's where Tim just says, I will call you back, and basically hangs up. Now, seemingly, Tim Drake and Bernard are potentially not a thing anymore at this particular point. We don't necessarily know. We don't really get that deep into his own lore. Instead, what ends up happening is he just kind of observes this screen, which is all just filled with binary code. And in turn, Tim Drake starts to decipher it. And what it reads is it says, Tim, this is Bruce. I need your help. And so Tim just says, I do love a good puzzle. That it's been a long time since someone hacked the Bat computer. And he just says, trying to take over my case, that is not going to happen. But seemingly the numbers keep rolling in, right? And that's where he says, you're good, right? But even good should not be able to get past my defenses. Oracle 2.0 built them. And that's where he says, I don't care who you are, I will stop your hack and then track you down and bring you in. What are you after, right? Is it like my old case files? But it doesn't matter, right? I'm shutting you out now. But that's when you find out all these tech bats are like coming up behind him. And of course, he sees them coming from a mile away, because whether you like it or not, there is a credible argument to be made. Tim Drake is the most capable Robin that Batman has ever had, and is arguably next in line to be the successor to Bruce. I imagine most Batman fans would say that that's the case. People would think Damian, but honestly, Tim Drake, that kid was built to be Batman. He's just built different. But that's the thing, is that when these bats start coming after him, right, these bat mechs start attacking him, it's not what he thinks, right? He says, I have better toys. But as he's attacking them, they're talking to him, right? Tim, it's Bruce, but not your Bruce. And he just says, you're either a rogue AI program or a virus sent to infect my systems. And Bruce just says, when you were 14 years old, you broke into the Batcave. You thought I needed a Robin. And Tim just says, right, I'm shutting you down. Batcave, eliminate all power to the cave now. And that's where Bruce tries to get these last bits of messages out, right? You told me that you used to dream about your father's death. And that's where Tim stops dead in his tracks, right? And he's like, no one knew that but Bruce Wayne. And so that's where Bruce says, I just needed more time in your system to gain access to your holograms. And he manifests, right? And Bruce just says, I've been trapped within your system for a few days now. It took me a moment to gain control, but in that time, I saw your files and I saw you. And I want you to know how proud I am of you. You dedicated yourself to not only solving crime in Gotham, but solving Gotham itself. You're smarter than I have ever been. You're a better Batman than I am. And that's where Tim lashes out and says, then why can't I solve your murder? And Bruce just says, because you didn't want to, right? And that's when Tim Drake takes off the mask and he just says, please, right? Whether you're real or AI, I do not need to be patronized by you. You are a great detective, but I never took you to be a great therapist, Bruce. And Bruce just says, Tim, You know that it's true. You had the clues and the answers, but you never let yourself solve it, because then I would really be dead. You hold on to the mystery, meaning you hold on to me, which is a crazy statement to hear, right? The idea that Tim Drake could have solved Bruce's mystery, but refusing to do so means that he can hold on to this false hope that maybe Bruce isn't really dead. It shows how close Tim was to Bruce and how much he really saw him as a father, and this whole conversation really shows how much Bruce saw him as a son. And Tim initially rejects it, right? He says, it's because I wish I could solve just one last case with you, but whether he's lying here or he's telling the truth or Bruce's analysis is correct, the reality here is that it's all rooted in the idea that Tim Drake cannot let Bruce go. And it's tragic. It's crushing, right? And so that's where Bruce says, then we will. Since I gained access to your system, I scanned the crime scene photos and all of your evidence. Look again, right? My body was in the Batcave. You know me, Tim. Look at what was on my belt. What am I missing? And that's where he just says, I know who killed you, right? You solved it. You beat me. And Bruce just says, only one way to know. We have to go catch them now. And Tim just says, I would love that, right? I can upload you to one of the robots again. We can catch your killer and then figure out how to get you out of my computers. But in that moment, Batman starts freaking out and literally he's yanked away. And that's where Tim just starts panicking, right? What's happening? Let me help you, please. And Tim just kind of falls to his knees. And he's like, I don't want to do this without you. And that's where he's yanked back by the Heart of Apocalypse. And the Heart of Apocalypse says, you were supposed to fight him, not help him. And Bruce just says, you're just mad that I beat your test my way. And that's where the Heart says, and because of that, I will break you. I can show you all the different versions of Batman that you will face. I can make the people you love want to kill you, but instead, I will hurt you in a different way. And he just says, I warned you. And so Bruce wakes up in a bed, right? And that's where he starts talking to himself. Older, more lines, lots of years. Gotham, in Jason's world, it was silent. Not here, but I'm not in the mansion or my brownstone. And he looks out the window and he says, this is Crime Alley, but it's alive, right? It doesn't look like this torn down, derelict place, like a third world country within the United States. Instead, he just says, how is this possible? I have never seen the city like this. Gotham is incredible. And here's where things get cool, because at that point, this voice comes in and says, I saved Gotham, Father, but I was only able to do it because of what you taught me. And he says, at first, I followed in your footsteps, and then I started my own path. And now, Gotham doesn't need a Batman anymore. This is Damian Wayne. And Bruce looks at him, right? He's like, Damian, right? Like, you look so good. Like, you look so cleaned up, right? He says, we need to talk. And Damian just says, hold on, I know. I'm too smart to not know. This world is not real. It's like I can see the reality's cracks in my peripheral vision. Whatever built it made me too smart, too much like what I imagine the real me is like. This is all part of some kind of cosmic contest. And he says, you are real. This was made to manipulate you. And so Bruce just asks, right, can you help me escape? And that's where Tim says, I will if you want, but first, you need to understand what is at stake for me. And that's when he looks down and he just says, hey, come over here. Like, it's okay. You don't have to be scared. And he just says, Father, this is your grandson. His name is Alfred. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Cliffhangers. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like. I'm excited for part 4, and I will catch you all later. Peace.